Let me ask you something. How many times have you started something with pure fire in your heart, only to watch that flame flicker and die within days? How many goals have you set on January 1st that were forgotten by February? How many times have you promised yourself this time will be different, only to fall back into the same old patterns? If you're being honest, the answer is probably too many times to count. And here's the truth that nobody wants to hear. It's not that you lack ambition. It's not that you don't want success badly enough. It's that you've been approaching consistency all wrong. Consistency isn't about motivation. It's not about willpower. It's not even about discipline in the way you think. Consistency is a system. It's a framework. It's a code that, once cracked, makes showing up every single day as automatic as breathing. Most people fail at consistency because they rely on feelings. They wait to feel motivated. They wait to feel inspired. They wait to feel ready. But feelings are the most unreliable foundation you could possibly build on. Feelings change with the weather, with your sleep quality, with a random comment someone made to you yesterday. The people who achieve extraordinary things, the ones who build empires, transform their bodies, master their crafts, they don't rely on feelings. They rely on systems. They've learned to decouple action from emotion. They've built a framework that carries them forward even when every fiber of their being wants to quit. In the next 30 days, you're going to build that system. You're going to rewire your brain, restructure your habits, and redesign your environment so that consistency becomes your default setting. Not through brute force, not through white-knuckling your way through, but through intelligent design. This isn't a motivational pep talk that leaves you pumped for 3 days and then forgotten. This is a practical, step-by-step blueprint that will transform the way you approach every single goal in your life. By the time you finish this journey, you won't be the person who starts and stops. You'll be the person who starts and never looks back. Are you ready? Then let's begin building your unshakable consistency system. Chapter 1. Why you fail at consistency and it's not your fault. Before we build something new, we need to understand what's been breaking. Because the reason you failed at consistency in the past isn't a character flaw. It's not weakness. It's not lack of discipline. It's that you've been fighting against your own biology and psychology without even knowing it. Your brain is designed for survival, not success. It's wired to conserve energy, avoid discomfort, and seek immediate rewards. Every time you try to build a new habit or maintain consistency, you're literally fighting against millions of years of evolutionary programming. Your brain sees any change as a potential threat to your survival and does everything it can to pull you back to familiar patterns. This is why motivation doesn't work. Motivation is an emotion, and emotions are designed to be temporary. They're meant to give you a quick burst of energy to deal with immediate circumstances, not to sustain long-term behavioral change. Relying on motivation to maintain consistency is like trying to drive across the country on a single tank of gas. You might get somewhere, but you're not going to reach your destination. Let's talk about the consistency killers that have been sabotaging you. First, there's the motivation trap. You start something when you're feeling inspired, but that inspiration is inevitably going to fade. When it does, you think something is wrong with you. You think you've lost your drive. But nothing's wrong. The motivation was never meant to last. You just didn't have a system to carry you forward when it disappeared. Second, there's the all-or-nothing mindset. You set impossibly high standards for yourself, and the moment you fall short, you give up entirely. You miss one workout and decide the whole week is ruined. You eat one unhealthy meal and throw away your entire nutrition plan. This black and white thinking is poison to consistency. Progress isn't linear. It's messy. It's imperfect. And if you can't accept that, you'll never build lasting habits. Third, there's the identity disconnect. You're trying to take actions that don't align with who you believe you are. If you see yourself as someone who isn't disciplined, every disciplined action you take creates cognitive dissonance. Your brain doesn't like that discomfort, so it pulls you back to behaviors that match your self-image. This is why so many people self-sabotage just as they're starting to succeed. Their actions are getting ahead of their identity, and their subconscious mind reels them back in. Fourth, there's environmental friction. Your environment is either making consistency easy or making it nearly impossible, and most people never even think about this. If you're trying to eat healthy but your kitchen is stocked with junk food, you're making it unnecessarily hard. If you're trying to focus on deep work but your phone is constantly buzzing with notifications, you're fighting an uphill battle. Your environment shapes your behavior far more than your willpower ever will. And finally, there's the lack of feedback loops. You're working hard, but you have no idea if you're making progress. Without clear metrics and regular feedback, your brain has no way to know if what you're doing is working. This creates uncertainty, and uncertainty kills motivation. You need to see progress to stay committed, even if that progress is small. Understanding these consistency killers is the first step. You're not broken. You're not lazy. You're not lacking something that other people have. You've just been using the wrong approach. And now that you know what's been holding you back, we can start building the system that's going to carry you forward. In the next chapter, we're going to dive into the core principles of unshakable consistency. These are the foundational truths that every single lasting habit is built on. Once you understand these principles, everything else will fall into place. Chapter 2. The 4 pillars of unshakable consistency. If you want to build consistency that lasts, you need to understand the 4 pillars that support it. These aren't optional. They're not nice to have. They're the foundation. Without them, any habit you try to build will eventually crumble. With them, you become virtually unstoppable. The first pillar is clarity. You need to know exactly what you're trying to do, why you're doing it, and what success looks like. Vague intentions lead to vague results. I want to get fit is not clarity. Going to the gym 4 times a week for 45-minute sessions is clarity. I want to be successful is not clarity. Earning $10,000 a month through my business is clarity. Most people fail at consistency because they never define what they're actually committing to. They have a general sense of what they want, but no specific plan. And when things get hard, that lack of clarity gives them an out. They can tell themselves they're still working toward their goal even when they're not taking any action. Clarity removes that escape hatch. When you know exactly what you're supposed to do, there's no room for negotiation with yourself. But clarity isn't just about defining the action. It's also about understanding your why. Why does this goal matter to you? Not the surface-level reason. The deep, emotional reason. Because when things get difficult, and they will, your why is what's going to keep you going. If your why is strong enough, the how becomes a lot easier to figure out. The second pillar is commitment. This is different from motivation. Motivation says, I'll do this when I feel like it. Commitment says, I'll do this regardless of how I feel. Commitment is a decision you make once and then honor every single day, even on the days when you don't want to. Here's the thing about commitment. Most people treat it like a suggestion. They commit to something, but in the back of their mind, they leave themselves an out. They tell themselves they'll do it unless something comes up, unless they're too tired, unless it's inconvenient. But that's not commitment. That's a wish with an asterisk. True commitment means burning the boats. It means removing the option to quit. It means deciding that this is non-negotiable, no matter what. And when you make that level of commitment, something shifts inside you. Your brain stops wasting energy debating whether you should do the thing. It accepts that the thing is going to happen and starts figuring out how to make it happen as efficiently as possible. The third pillar is systems over goals. Goals are important for direction, but systems are what actually create results. Your goal might be to lose 20 pounds, but your system is eating healthy meals and working out regularly. Your goal might be to write a book, but your system is writing 500 words every day. The problem with focusing only on goals is that they're binary. You either achieve them or you don't. And if you're measuring your success only by whether you've reached the goal, you're going to feel like a failure every single day until you get there. That's not sustainable. Systems, on the other hand, give you wins every single day. Every time you follow your system, you succeed. And those daily wins compound. They build momentum. They create confidence. They make the journey itself rewarding, not just the destination. When you shift your focus from goals to systems, you stop living in the future and start living in the present. You stop waiting to be happy until you achieve the goal and start finding satisfaction in the process. And ironically, this is what actually helps you achieve your goals faster. The fourth pillar is identity. This is the most powerful and most overlooked pillar of consistency. Your habits are a reflection of your identity. You don't just do things. You do things because of who you believe you are. If you believe you're someone who values health, you make healthy choices. If you believe you're someone who is disciplined, you act with discipline. The problem is, most people try to change their behavior without changing their identity. They try to act like a different person while still identifying as their old self. And this creates massive internal resistance. Every action that doesn't align with your identity feels forced and uncomfortable. Eventually, your identity wins and you snap back to your old behaviors. The key to lasting change is to work on identity first. Don't try to act like a disciplined person. Become a disciplined person. Every small action you take is a vote for the type of person you want to become. Go to the gym once, and you're casting a vote for being someone who values fitness. Write for 10 minutes, and you're casting a vote for being a writer. The more votes you cast, the stronger that identity becomes. And once that identity is locked in, the behaviors become automatic. These four pillars, clarity, commitment, systems, and identity, are what make consistency unshakable. In the chapters ahead, we're going to break down exactly how to build each of these pillars into your life. But for now, I want you to reflect on which of these pillars is weakest in your current approach. Because that's where we're going to start building. Chapter 3. The 30-Day Framework, Your Roadmap to Consistency. Now that you understand the principles, let's talk about the framework. The next 30 days are going to be divided into 3 phases, each designed to build on the previous one. This isn't random. This is based on how behavior change actually works in the brain. Phase 1, days 1 through 10, is the foundation phase. This is where you're setting up the structure that everything else will be built on. During these 10 days, your only job is to show up. You're not trying to be perfect. You're not trying to go all out. You're just proving to yourself that you can do the thing consistently, even if it's at a minimal level. Why? Because your brain needs evidence before it will believe in change. If you failed at consistency 100 times before, your brain has learned that you don't follow through. It's going to resist your efforts because it assumes you'll quit like you always do. But when you show up every single day for 10 days, even if it's just for 5 minutes, you start to overwrite that programming. You're showing your brain that this time is different. During the foundation phase, you're also going to establish your keystone habit. This is the one habit that, when done consistently, makes everything else easier. For many people, this is a morning routine. When you win the morning, you win the day. But it could also be journaling, meditation, or any practice that centers you and sets the tone for everything else. The key is to keep it small and manageable. If you're building a workout habit, don't commit to an hour at the gym. Commit to 10 minutes of movement. If you're building a writing habit, don't commit to writing 1,000 words. Commit to writing for 5 minutes. The goal is to make it so easy that you have no excuse not to do it. Phase 2, days 11 through 20, is the momentum phase. By now, you've proven to yourself that you can show up consistently. You've built some early evidence of change. Now it's time to increase the intensity and start seeing real results. During this phase, you're going to gradually scale up your effort. If you were doing 10 minutes of exercise, now you're doing 20. If you were writing for 5 minutes, now you're writing for 15. But here's the key: you're not doubling overnight. You're increasing gradually, just 10 to 20% at a time. This keeps the change manageable and prevents burnout. You're also going to start stacking habits. Once your keystone habit is solid, you can start adding complementary habits around it. If your morning routine is locked in, you might add evening planning. If your workout habit is consistent, you might add meal prep. The idea is to build a web of habits that reinforce each other. This is also the phase where you'll face your first real test. The initial excitement has worn off. The habit isn't new and shiny anymore. This is where most people quit. But you're not going to, because you've built a system that doesn't rely on excitement. You're going to push through, and on the other side of this phase, you'll find something powerful: confidence. Real, earned confidence that comes from doing hard things even when you don't feel like it. Phase 3, days 21 through 30, is the integration phase. This is where consistency becomes part of who you are. You're not forcing it anymore. You're not gritting your teeth and pushing through. It's just what you do. During this phase, your focus shifts from effort to refinement. You're optimizing your system. You're noticing what's working and what's not. You're making small adjustments to make the habit more efficient, more enjoyable, more sustainable. You're also going to focus on building flexibility into your system. Because life happens. There will be days when your routine gets disrupted. The question is, do you have a backup plan? If you can't do your full workout, do you have a 10-minute version? If you don't have time for your usual morning routine, do you have a 5-minute version? The goal is to make it so that there's always a way to honor your commitment, even on the hardest days. By day 30, consistency isn't something you do. It's who you are. The habit is integrated into your identity. And once that happens, maintaining it takes far less effort than building it did. You've reached the point where not doing it feels weirder than doing it. This 30-day framework isn't magic. It's simply a structured approach to behavior change that works with your psychology instead of against it. In the next chapters, we're going to break down the specific tactics and strategies you'll use within each phase. But understanding the overall structure is crucial, because it gives you a roadmap. You know where you are, where you're going, and what comes next. Chapter 4. Building your consistency environment. You are not separate from your environment. You are a product of it. The space you live in, the people you surround yourself with, the systems you have in place, all of these things shape your behavior far more than willpower ever could. If you want to build unshakable consistency, you need to design an environment that makes consistency inevitable. Let's start with your physical space. Look around you right now. Is your environment set up to support your goals or sabotage them? If you're trying to read more, are books visible and accessible, or are they buried on a shelf somewhere while your TV dominates the room? If you're trying to eat healthy, is your kitchen stocked with nutritious food, or is it filled with junk that tempts you every time you open the fridge? The principle here is simple. Make good behaviors obvious and easy, and make bad behaviors invisible and difficult. If you want to work out in the morning, lay out your workout clothes the night before. Put your sneakers by the door. Make it so that when you wake up, the path of least resistance leads directly to your goal. On the flip side, if you're trying to break a bad habit, add friction. If you're trying to reduce screen time, delete social media apps from your phone. If you're trying to eat less sugar, don't buy it in the first place. Every bit of friction you add makes the unwanted behavior less likely to happen. But environment isn't just about physical space. It's also about social environment. The 5 people you spend the most time with shape who you become. If you're surrounded by people who are lazy, undisciplined, and complacent, you will drift toward those behaviors no matter how much you want to change. If you're surrounded by people who are driven, disciplined, and constantly improving, their standards will become your standards. This doesn't mean you need to cut everyone out of your life. But it does mean you need to be intentional about who you spend your time with. Seek out people who embody the traits you want to develop. Join communities of people who are working towards similar goals. Surround yourself with accountability and inspiration. Another crucial element of your environment is your information diet. What you consume shapes what you think, and what you think shapes what you do. If you're constantly consuming content that makes you feel anxious, inadequate, or distracted, that's going to affect your consistency. Be ruthless about what you allow into your mind. Unfollow accounts that make you feel bad about yourself. Stop watching news that's designed to trigger fear and outrage. Curate your feed so that what you see inspires, educates, and motivates you. Your attention is your most valuable resource. Protect it. Now let's talk about systems and automation. The more decisions you have to make, the more opportunities there are to fail. Decision fatigue is real, and it's one of the biggest threats to consistency. The solution is to automate as much as possible. Create routines that eliminate the need for decisions. If you always work out at 6 a.m., you don't have to decide when to work out. If you always eat the same breakfast, you don't have to decide what to make. If you always write for the first hour of your workday, you don't have to decide when to start. This isn't about being rigid or boring. It's about conserving your decision-making energy for the things that actually matter. The more you can put on autopilot, the more mental bandwidth you have for creativity, problem-solving, and growth. Your environment also includes your tools and resources. Do you have what you need to succeed? If you're trying to build a meditation practice, do you have a quiet space and a cushion? If you're trying to learn a new skill, do you have access to the right books, courses, or mentors? If you're trying to build a business, do you have the tools and systems in place to make progress? Investing in the right tools isn't an expense. It's removing friction from your path. Every obstacle you remove makes consistency easier. And easier means more sustainable. Finally, let's talk about time environment. When you try to do something matters almost as much as what you try to do. If you're a morning person, don't schedule your most important work for the evening. If you have limited energy after work, don't plan to go to the gym then. Work with your natural rhythms, not against them. Building a consistency environment isn't a one-time task. It's an ongoing process of identifying friction, removing obstacles, and creating structures that support your goals. But the investment is worth it. Because when your environment is aligned with your intentions, consistency stops being a struggle. It becomes the path of least resistance. In the next chapter, we're going to talk about the mental game of consistency. Because even with the perfect environment, your mind can still sabotage you if you don't know how to manage it. Chapter 5. Mastering the mental game of consistency. Your environment sets the stage, but your mindset runs the show. You can have the perfect setup, the ideal schedule, and all the right tools. But if your mind isn't aligned, you'll still find a way to sabotage yourself. This chapter is about mastering the internal game of consistency. Let's start with the voice in your head. That constant narrator that's commenting on everything you do. For most people, that voice is their worst enemy. It tells them they're not good enough. It reminds them of past failures. It whispers doubts when things get hard. And if you listen to that voice, it will talk you out of consistency every single time. The first step in mastering your mental game is recognizing that you are not your thoughts. You are the observer of your thoughts. There's a part of you that notices what you're thinking. That's the real you. The thoughts are just noise. They come and go, and you get to choose which ones you engage with and which ones you let pass by. When a negative thought shows up, don't fight it. Don't try to suppress it or argue with it. Just notice it. Acknowledge it. Label it as just a thought, not a fact. Then gently redirect your attention back to what you're doing. This skill, the ability to observe your thoughts without being controlled by them, is one of the most powerful tools you can develop. Now let's talk about the stories you tell yourself. Your brain is constantly creating narratives about who you are and what you're capable of. These stories become your identity, and your identity determines your actions. If your story is "I'm someone who starts things but never finishes them," guess what? You're going to quit. If your story is "I'm not a morning person," you're going to struggle to wake up early. If your story is "I don't have willpower," you're going to give in to every temptation. But here's the beautiful thing. These stories are not facts. They're just interpretations. And you can change them. You can rewrite your narrative. Instead of "I'm someone who quits," you can tell yourself "I'm someone who's learning to follow through." Instead of "I'm not a morning person," you can tell yourself "I'm becoming someone who owns the morning." Instead of "I don't have willpower," you can tell yourself "I'm building my discipline every single day." These might feel like small shifts, but they're profound. Because every time you tell yourself a new story, you create the possibility for a new behavior. And every time you act in alignment with that new story, you reinforce the identity you're building. Another critical mental skill is reframing. This is the ability to look at a situation from a different perspective. Most people see challenges as obstacles. But what if you saw them as opportunities to prove your commitment? Most people see setbacks as failures. But what if you saw them as feedback? The situation itself hasn't changed. Only your interpretation of it has. And that interpretation is what determines how you respond. If you interpret a missed workout as a sign that you're failing, you'll spiral into guilt and possibly give up. If you interpret it as a single data point that doesn't define you, you'll get back on track the next day without drama. Reframing isn't about toxic positivity or pretending everything is fine when it's not. It's about choosing the interpretation that serves you. Because there are always multiple ways to interpret any situation, and you might as well choose the one that empowers you. Let's talk about self-talk. The way you speak to yourself matters. If you're constantly berating yourself, calling yourself lazy or weak or undisciplined, you're programming your subconscious to believe that's who you are. And your subconscious will work to prove itself right. Instead, practice speaking to yourself the way you would speak to someone you love and want to see succeed. Be firm when necessary, but also be kind. Be honest, but also be encouraging. Would you tell someone you care about that they're worthless because they missed one day? No. You'd remind them that setbacks are normal and that what matters is getting back up. Give yourself that same grace. One of the most powerful mental tools for consistency is visualization. Your brain doesn't fully distinguish between a vividly imagined experience and a real one. When you visualize yourself successfully completing your habit, you're actually strengthening the neural pathways associated with that behavior. Spend a few minutes each day visualizing yourself showing up. See yourself going through the motions. Feel the satisfaction of following through. The more detailed and vivid you make it, the more effective it is. This isn't wishful thinking. This is mental rehearsal. Athletes do it. Performers do it. And you should too. Another key mental skill is learning to separate action from emotion. Most people wait until they feel like doing something before they do it. But feelings are fickle. If you wait to feel motivated, you'll be waiting forever. The secret is to act regardless of how you feel. Motivation doesn't create action. Action creates motivation. When you don't feel like working out, work out anyway. When you don't feel like writing, write anyway. Not because you're forcing yourself, but because you understand that the feeling will follow the action. Once you start, the resistance usually fades. And even if it doesn't, you've still honored your commitment, which builds your identity as someone who follows through. Finally, let's talk about the power of micro-commitments. When the full habit feels overwhelming, shrink it down to something so small that you can't say no. If you don't want to go to the gym, commit to just putting on your workout clothes. If you don't want to write, commit to just opening your document. Once you've done that tiny action, you'll often find the momentum to keep going. And even if you don't, you've still kept the chain alive. Because consistency isn't about intensity. It's about repetition. Doing a tiny version of your habit is infinitely better than doing nothing, because it maintains the pattern. Mastering the mental game of consistency isn't about becoming a robot who never struggles. It's about developing the tools to navigate your mind skillfully. It's about learning to work with your psychology not against it. And when you combine a strong mental game with a supportive environment, consistency becomes not just possible, but inevitable. Chapter 6. The Power of Micro Habits and Tiny Wins. Most people fail at building consistency because they try to change too much, too fast. They set ambitious goals, go all in for a few days, burn out, and quit. Then they blame themselves for lacking discipline. But the problem wasn't discipline. It was the approach. Real, lasting change doesn't happen through massive effort. It happens through tiny, consistent actions compounded over time. This is the power of micro habits. And once you understand how to use them, building unshakable consistency becomes almost effortless. A micro habit is a behavior that's so small, it seems almost insignificant. Doing one push-up, writing one sentence, meditating for 1 minute. These actions feel laughably easy. That's exactly the point. They're designed to bypass your brain's resistance. Your brain resists change because change feels threatening. It requires energy. It creates uncertainty. But when the change is tiny, your brain doesn't sound the alarm. It doesn't mobilize its defenses. It lets you slip through. And once you're in motion, it's much easier to keep going than it is to start. Here's the magic of micro habits. They work on multiple levels simultaneously. First, they build the habit loop. The cue, the routine, the reward. Even if the routine is tiny, you're still establishing the neural pathway. You're training your brain to associate the cue with the action. Over time, that pathway strengthens, and the habit becomes automatic. Second, micro habits build identity. Every time you do your micro habit, you're casting a vote for the person you want to become. You do one push-up, and you're telling yourself, I'm someone who exercises. You write one sentence, and you're telling yourself, I'm a writer. These votes add up. And once you've cast enough votes, your identity shifts. The habit stops being something you do and becomes part of who you are. Third, micro habits create momentum. Newton's first law applies to human behavior too. An object in motion stays in motion. Once you've started, even with something tiny, it's easier to continue than to stop. You tell yourself you'll just do one push-up, but once you're down on the floor, you might as well do 5 or 10. The micro habit is the gateway to bigger action. Fourth, micro habits eliminate the decision-making burden. When a habit is so small that it takes almost no time or effort, you don't have to debate whether to do it. There's no internal negotiation. You just do it. This conserves your willpower for other things. And finally, micro habits build confidence. Every time you follow through, even on something small, you prove to yourself that you're capable of keeping commitments. That confidence compounds. It spills over into other areas of your life. You start believing that maybe you can change. Maybe you can build consistency. Maybe you are the type of person who follows through. Now let's talk about how to actually implement micro habits. Start by identifying the behavior you want to make consistent. Let's say it's exercise. Don't commit to working out for an hour. Commit to doing 1 minute of movement. Just 1 minute. Set a timer. Do jumping jacks, push-ups, squats, anything. When the timer goes off, you're done. You've honored your commitment. Do this every single day for a week. No exceptions. Not because 1 minute of exercise is going to transform your body, but because you're building the pattern. You're proving to yourself that you can show up consistently. After a week, if you want to increase it, go ahead. But only by a little. Maybe you go to 2 minutes. Or you add a second tiny habit. The key is to never increase so much that it becomes intimidating. You want to stay in the zone where success feels inevitable. Another powerful strategy is habit stacking. This is where you attach your micro habit to an existing routine. After I pour my morning coffee, I'll do 1 minute of stretching. After I brush my teeth, I'll write one sentence. The existing habit serves as a cue for the new habit, making it easier to remember and execute. You can also use the 2-minute rule, popularized by productivity expert David Allen. If something takes less than 2 minutes, do it immediately. Don't add it to a list. Don't schedule it. Just do it. This creates a bias toward action and prevents tasks from piling up. Let's talk about tracking. There's a saying, what gets measured gets managed. When you track your micro habits, you create a visual representation of your consistency. The most effective tracking method is the simple X on a calendar. Every day you do your habit, mark an X. Your only goal is to not break the chain. This creates a powerful psychological effect. As your chain of excess grows, you become increasingly motivated not to break it. You don't want to see that gap. This method works because it makes your consistency visible. You can see your progress. And seeing progress is one of the most motivating things there is. But what about when you miss a day? Because you will miss a day. Life happens. The key is to never miss twice. One missed day is an anomaly. 2 missed days is the beginning of a new pattern. If you miss once, make it your top priority to get back on track immediately. No guilt. No self-flagellation. Just calm, determined action. Micro habits also work beautifully when you're dealing with resistance. Let's say you're supposed to work on a big project, but you're feeling overwhelmed and procrastinating. Instead of trying to force yourself to work for 2 hours, commit to working for just 2 minutes. Set a timer. Open the document. Start. When the timer goes off, you can stop if you want. But usually, you won't. The hardest part is starting. Once you're in motion, continuing is easier. This technique works because it removes the psychological barrier. Your brain isn't resisting 2 minutes. It's only resisting what it imagines comes after. But by committing only to the micro action, you trick your brain into getting started. And starting is everything. Here's the ultimate truth about micro habits. They're not about staying small forever. They're about building the foundation for something big. You start with 1 minute of meditation, but over time, it becomes 10 minutes. Then 20. You start with 1 push-up, but eventually, you're doing full workouts. The micro habit is the seed. With consistency, it grows into something substantial. But even if it doesn't, even if you just stick with a micro version, you're still winning. Because you're maintaining the pattern. You're reinforcing the identity. You're proving to yourself that you're someone who keeps commitments. And that matters more than the size of the action. In the next chapter, we're going to talk about dealing with the inevitable obstacles and setbacks. Because building consistency isn't a straight line. There will be challenges. But with the right strategies, you can navigate them without breaking your momentum. Chapter 7. Navigating obstacles without breaking your streak. No matter how well you design your system, obstacles will appear. Life will get in the way. You'll face unexpected challenges. You'll have bad days, sick days, days where everything seems to go wrong. The question isn't whether obstacles will come. It's how you'll respond when they do. Most people let one obstacle derail everything. They miss one day and decide the whole week is ruined. They face one setback and use it as evidence that consistency isn't for them. But that's not how successful people think. Successful people expect obstacles. They plan for them. And they have strategies to navigate them without losing momentum. The first strategy is the never miss twice rule. This is simple but powerful. If you miss your habit once, it's not a big deal. Life happens. But you cannot miss twice. Missing once is an exception. Missing twice is the beginning of a new pattern, and that pattern is inconsistency. When you miss a day, instead of spiraling into guilt or giving up entirely, you simply acknowledge it and commit to getting back on track immediately. No drama. No self-punishment. Just calm redirection. This approach keeps one setback from becoming a complete derailment. The second strategy is having scaled versions of your habit. You should have a full version, a medium version, and a minimum viable version. On a great day, you do the full version. On a tough day, you do the medium version. On a terrible day, you do the minimum viable version. But you always do something. For example, if your habit is working out, the full version might be a 60-minute gym session. The medium version might be a 30-minute home workout. The minimum viable version might be 10 push-ups and 10 squats. The key is that even on your worst day, you can still honor your commitment in some form. This approach has two benefits. First, it maintains the pattern. Even if you only do the minimum, you're still keeping the chain alive. Second, it removes the all-or-nothing thinking that causes people to give up. You're training yourself to see that some action is always better than no action. The third strategy is implementation intentions. This is a fancy term for if-then planning. You anticipate potential obstacles and decide in advance how you'll respond. If it's raining and I can't run outside, then I'll do an indoor workout. If I'm traveling and don't have access to a gym, then I'll do bodyweight exercises in my hotel room. If I'm sick and can't do my normal routine, then I'll do gentle stretching. By planning for obstacles in advance, you eliminate the decision-making burden when they actually occur. You're not trying to figure out what to do in the moment when your willpower is low. You've already decided. You just execute the plan. The fourth strategy is environmental design for worst-case scenarios. This means setting up your environment so that even when things go wrong, consistency is still possible. Keep workout clothes in your car. Have healthy snacks in your bag. Download content you can consume offline. The more backup systems you have in place, the fewer excuses you'll have. Let's talk about the role of flexibility. Consistency doesn't mean rigidity. It doesn't mean doing the exact same thing at the exact same time every single day, no matter what. That's a recipe for burnout. True consistency is about honoring your commitment in whatever way is realistic given the circumstances. If you usually work out in the morning but something comes up, work out in the evening. If you usually write for an hour but you only have 10 minutes, write for 10 minutes. The goal is to maintain the pattern, not to be perfect. Another critical element is recovery. Physical recovery, mental recovery, and emotional recovery. If you're pushing yourself hard every single day without any rest, you will burn out. And burnout is the enemy of consistency. Build rest into your system. Have active recovery days. Have days where you do less. This isn't slacking. It's strategic. You're playing the long game. Now let's address a common obstacle: loss of motivation. Because it will happen. The initial excitement will fade. The habit will stop feeling new and exciting. This is where most people quit. They interpret the loss of motivation as a sign that something is wrong. But nothing is wrong. This is normal. Motivation is what gets you started. Systems are what keep you going. When motivation fades, you don't try to force it back. You simply follow your system. You show up because that's what you do, not because you feel like it. And here's the interesting thing. When you show up consistently even without motivation, motivation often returns. But by then, you don't need it anymore. What about when you face a major life disruption? A move, a new job, a crisis. These are the moments that test your consistency the most. The key is to acknowledge that your normal routine might not be possible, but something is still possible. You might need to temporarily scale back to your minimum viable version. That's okay. What's not okay is using the disruption as an excuse to stop completely. During major disruptions, focus on maintaining the identity even if you can't maintain the full behavior. If you can't work out for an hour, do 10 minutes. If you can't write 1,000 words, write 1 sentence. The behavior might be smaller, but the message you're sending to yourself is the same. I'm someone who follows through. One of the most powerful reframes you can make is to see obstacles not as threats, but as opportunities to prove your commitment. Anyone can be consistent when things are easy. The people who achieve extraordinary things are the ones who stay consistent when things are hard. Every obstacle you overcome strengthens your identity as someone who doesn't quit. Keep a record of obstacles you've overcome. Write them down. Celebrate them. Because every time you face a challenge and keep going anyway, you're building evidence that you can handle whatever comes. That evidence becomes a source of confidence that carries you through future challenges. In the next chapter, we're going to talk about the power of accountability and community. Because while you can build consistency on your own, it's much easier and more sustainable when you have support. Chapter 8. Accountability and community, the force multipliers. You can do this alone. But you don't have to. And if you're smart, you won't. Because accountability and community are force multipliers. They make everything easier, faster, and more sustainable. Let's start with accountability. Human beings are social creatures. We care about what other people think of us, even when we say we don't. This isn't weakness. It's human nature, and you can use it to your advantage. When you make a commitment to another person, you're more likely to follow through. Why? Because the cost of breaking that commitment is higher. It's not just disappointing yourself. It's disappointing someone else. It's damaging your reputation. Your brain weighs these social costs heavily, and as a result, you're more motivated to keep your word. The simplest form of accountability is telling someone about your commitment. Not just mentioning it in passing, but really telling them. Explaining what you're doing, why it matters to you, and asking them to check in on your progress. This creates a social contract. You've put your word on the line. But there's a difference between good accountability and bad accountability. Bad accountability is someone nagging you or guilting you when you slip up. That creates resentment and actually makes you less likely to follow through. Good accountability is someone who checks in with genuine interest, celebrates your wins, and helps you problem solve when you face obstacles. Choose your accountability partner carefully. It should be someone who is also working on self-improvement, someone who understands the challenge of building consistency, and someone who will be honest with you without being judgmental. Another powerful form of accountability is public commitment. When you announce your goal publicly, whether on social media, in a group, or to friends and family, you create social pressure to follow through. This isn't about seeking validation. It's about using your natural desire to maintain your reputation as fuel for consistency. But be strategic about this. Don't announce every goal you have. Research shows that when you talk too much about your goals, your brain gets a premature sense of accomplishment, which can actually reduce your motivation to follow through. Instead, announce your commitment to the process, not the outcome. I'm committing to working out every day for 30 days is better than I'm going to lose 20 pounds. Now let's talk about community. There's a saying, you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. This isn't just motivational fluff. It's backed by research. Your peer group shapes your behavior more than almost anything else. If you want to build consistency, surround yourself with people who are already consistent. Their standards become your standards. Their habits become normalized, and you find yourself naturally rising to their level. This doesn't mean you need to abandon your current friends. But it does mean you need to intentionally seek out communities of people who embody the traits you want to develop. Join groups, online or offline, where people are working on similar goals. Engage regularly. Share your progress. Learn from others. Offer support. The benefits of community go beyond just accountability. You also get access to collective knowledge. Someone in the group has faced the obstacle you're facing right now. Someone has found a solution to the problem you're struggling with. You don't have to figure everything out alone. Community also provides inspiration. On days when you're struggling, seeing someone else push through can reignite your motivation. And on days when you're winning, sharing your success with people who understand the journey makes the win even sweeter. But here's an important caveat. Choose your communities carefully. Not all groups are created equal. Some communities enable mediocrity. They normalize excuses. They celebrate intentions without demanding action. Those communities will drag you down. Look for communities where the standard is high, where people actually do the work, where accountability is real and results are expected. Those communities will elevate you.
Another form of community is finding a mentor or coach. Someone who has already achieved what you're working toward. Someone who can guide you, challenge you, and hold you to a higher standard. You don't necessarily need to pay for this, though sometimes investing financially increases your commitment. But at minimum, study people who embody the consistency you want to build. One powerful community strategy is the mastermind group. This is a small group of people, usually 3 to 5, who meet regularly to share progress, solve problems, and hold each other accountable. Mastermind groups work because they combine accountability, support, and collective intelligence. If you can't find an existing mastermind, create one. Reach out to people who are working on similar goals and propose meeting weekly or bi-weekly. Set clear expectations. Everyone shares their progress. Everyone commits to action items. Everyone supports each other. The structure matters as much as the people. Let's also talk about digital accountability. There are apps and platforms designed to help you track and share your consistency. Some let you bet money on your commitment, which you lose if you don't follow through. Others create visual streaks that you don't want to break. These tools can be incredibly effective if used correctly. But be careful not to rely solely on digital tools. They're helpful, but they can't replace human connection. The most powerful accountability comes from real relationships where people know you, care about you, and genuinely want to see you succeed. One final point about accountability and community. Don't just take. Give. Be someone who offers accountability and support to others. When you help someone else stay consistent, it reinforces your own commitment. Teaching is one of the best ways to learn. Supporting others is one of the best ways to strengthen yourself. In the next chapter, we're going to dive into the science of habit formation. Understanding how habits work at a neurological level will give you even more tools to build unshakable consistency. Chapter 9. The neuroscience of habit formation. Your brain is constantly looking for ways to conserve energy. It wants to make repeated behaviors automatic so it doesn't have to think about them every time. This is the basis of habit formation, and understanding it gives you a massive advantage in building consistency. When you first learn a new behavior, it requires conscious effort. You have to think about each step. Your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for decision-making and willpower, is actively engaged. This is why new behaviors feel hard. They require mental energy. But when you repeat a behavior consistently in the same context, something magical happens. Your brain starts to encode that behavior as a habit loop. It moves from conscious processing to automatic processing. The behavior gets transferred to the basal ganglia, a more primitive part of your brain that handles automatic behaviors. Once this transfer is complete, the behavior requires much less mental energy. You can do it while thinking about other things. It becomes automatic. This is why you can drive your car without consciously thinking about every action. Your brain has made it a habit. The habit loop consists of 3 components: the cue, the routine, and the reward. The cue is a trigger that tells your brain to initiate the behavior. The routine is the behavior itself. The reward is the positive consequence that reinforces the loop. Understanding the structure allows you to design habits intentionally. First, choose a clear cue. This could be a time of day, a location, a preceding action, or an emotional state. The key is that it's consistent and noticeable. After I wake up. After I finish breakfast. When I enter my office. These are all effective cues. Second, define the routine clearly. This is the behavior you want to make automatic. The more specific you are, the better. Not exercise, but 10 minutes of bodyweight exercises. Not read, but read for 15 minutes before bed. Third,
identify, or create a reward. This is what makes your brain want to repeat the loop. Rewards can be intrinsic, the good feeling you get from accomplishing something, or extrinsic, a treat you give yourself. The key is that it's immediate and satisfying. Natural rewards are powerful. The endorphin rush after exercise. The sense of calm after meditation. The feeling of progress after crossing something off your list. These intrinsic rewards are self-sustaining. But when you're building a new habit, it can help to add an external reward initially to strengthen the loop. One critical insight from neuroscience is that habits are context-dependent. Your brain associates behaviors with the environment in which they occur. This is why it's easier to maintain good habits at home than when you're traveling. The cues are different. The context has changed. You can use this to your advantage. By always doing your habit in the same place or at the same time, you strengthen the association. Your brain starts to automatically trigger the behavior when it encounters that context. This is the power of the keystone habit we discussed earlier. When you do it in the same place every day, that place becomes a cue. Another key finding is about dopamine, the neurotransmitter associated with motivation and reward. Your brain releases dopamine not just when you receive a reward, but in anticipation of a reward. This is why habits feel good to do. You're not just getting the reward at the end. You're getting a hit of dopamine when you anticipate doing the thing. This is also why checking your phone is so addictive. Every time you pick it up, there's a possibility of a reward, a message, a piece of interesting information. That possibility triggers dopamine. Your brain loves that uncertainty. You can engineer this into your habits. Create anticipation. If you're building a reading habit, think about how enjoyable it will be to get lost in a good book. If you're building a workout habit, focus on how good you'll feel afterward. The more you can link positive anticipation to the habit, the easier it becomes to maintain. Let's talk about the timeline of habit formation. You've probably heard that it takes 21 days to form a habit. This is a myth. The actual research shows that it varies widely, from 18 days to 254 days, with an average of 66 days. But here's what matters more than the timeline: consistency. A habit forms when you've repeated the behavior enough times in the same context that your brain has encoded it as automatic. Some habits automate faster than others. Simple behaviors with clear cues and immediate rewards form faster. Complex behaviors with delayed rewards take longer. The good news is that you don't have to wait for full automation to benefit from a habit. Even before it's fully automatic, the repetition is building your identity and creating momentum. And every repetition makes the next one easier. Now let's talk about breaking bad habits. The common advice is to rely on willpower to resist them. But neuroscience tells us that doesn't work very well. Why? Because bad habits are encoded in your brain just like good habits. The neural pathway is there, and it doesn't go away just because you decide you don't want it anymore. Instead of trying to eliminate a bad habit, replace it. Identify the cue that triggers the bad habit and the reward you get from it. Then create a new routine that delivers a similar reward in response to the same cue. For example, if stress is your cue, and your bad habit is eating junk food, you could replace eating with a different stress relief routine, like going for a walk or doing deep breathing. This works because you're not fighting against the existing neural pathway. You're redirecting it. The cue and reward stay the same. Only the routine changes. This is much easier for your brain to accept. Another insight from neuroscience is the role of stress in habit formation. When you're stressed, your brain falls back on automatic behaviors because it doesn't have the energy for conscious decision-making. This is why stress often leads to relapse. You default to old patterns because they're automatic. The solution is to make your good habits as automatic as your bad habits were. The more you reinforce the new pattern, the more likely it is to stick even when you're stressed. This is why the 30-day framework is so important. You're building the habit to the point where it becomes your default response. Understanding the neuroscience of habits doesn't just give you knowledge. It gives you power. You're no longer operating in the dark. hoping willpower will carry you through. You're using evidence-based strategies to work with your brain's natural wiring. And that makes building consistency so much easier. In the next chapter, we're going to talk about maintaining consistency long-term. Because building a habit in 30 days is one thing. Keeping it for years is another. And that's where the real transformation happens. Chapter 10. Long-term consistency, the compound effect. If you've made it this far, you're no longer a beginner. You've built the foundation. You've established the habit. You've proven to yourself that you can be consistent for 30 days. Now the real journey begins. Maintaining that consistency long-term. This is where most people falter. They build momentum, see some results, and then slowly drift back to old patterns. Not because they lack discipline, but because they don't understand the principles of long-term consistency. This chapter will change that. The first principle is the compound effect. Small actions, repeated consistently over time, create exponential results. But most people quit before they reach the inflection point where the compounding becomes visible. Imagine you have two choices. Option A gives you $1 million today. Option B gives you 1 cent today, but that amount doubles every day for 30 days. Which would you choose? Most people would instinctively choose option A. But let's do the math. On day 30, option B gives you over $5 million. That's the power of compounding. The same principle applies to habits. Going to the gym once doesn't transform your body, but going consistently for a year does. Writing 500 words once doesn't make you a writer, but doing it every day for a year produces over 180,000 words, enough for a substantial book. The problem is that in the early stages, the results are almost invisible. You're putting in effort, but the needle barely moves. This is where most people give up. They think it's not working, but it is working. You're just in the valley of latent potential, the period where inputs far exceed visible outputs. If you can push through this valley, stay consistent even when you don't see results, you'll eventually reach the inflection point. That's when the compounding kicks in visibly. Your progress accelerates. The results become undeniable. But you only get there if you don't quit in the valley. The second principle is identity reinforcement. In the early stages, you're building a habit. In the long term, you're maintaining an identity. Every action you take is a vote for the type of person you are. And the more votes you cast, the stronger that identity becomes. When you've been consistent for months or years, the habit becomes part of who you are. You don't think about whether to do it. You just do it because that's what you do. This is the ultimate form of consistency, where the behavior is so integrated into your identity that not doing it feels wrong. But identity can work against you too. If you break consistency for too long, you start casting votes for a different identity. You start seeing yourself as someone who used to be disciplined but isn't anymore. That's why protecting your streak is so important. Not because missing one day ruins everything, but because the identity shift begins with repeated breaks. The third principle is continuous optimization. Long-term consistency doesn't mean doing the exact same thing forever. It means constantly refining your approach to make the habit more effective, more efficient, and more enjoyable. Every few months, review your system. What's working? What's not? What could be better? Maybe your workout routine has become stale and you need to switch it up. Maybe your writing process could be streamlined. Maybe you've discovered a better time of day for your habit. Optimization keeps the habit fresh. It prevents boredom. And it ensures that you're not just going through the motions, but actually progressing. The goal isn't just to maintain consistency. It's to make consistent progress. The fourth principle is lifestyle integration. In the beginning, your habit might feel like an extra thing you have to do. In the long term, it should be seamlessly integrated into your lifestyle. It should feel as natural as brushing your teeth. This happens when the habit serves multiple needs in your life. For example, your workout habit might also be your stress relief, your social time if you work out with friends, and your personal growth time if you listen to audiobooks while exercising.
The more functions a habit serves, the more integrated it becomes.
The fifth principle is legacy thinking. Long-term consistency is easier when you're thinking beyond yourself. When you realize that your habits aren't just about you, but about the example you're setting, the person you're becoming for your family, your community, your future. What kind of person do you want to be in 10 years? What kind of legacy do you want to leave? Every day of consistency is a building block toward that legacy. This perspective makes short-term discomfort easier to endure because you're focused on something much bigger. Now let's talk about plateaus. In any long-term pursuit, you'll hit periods where progress seems to stall. You're still putting in the work, but you're not seeing improvement. This is normal. Plateaus are part of the process. But they're also where most people quit. The key to getting through plateaus is to trust the process. Remember that growth isn't always linear. Sometimes you're building a foundation that will support a leap forward later. Sometimes your body or brain needs time to integrate what you've learned before you can progress further. During plateaus, focus on process over results. Celebrate the consistency itself, not just the outcomes. And be patient. If you keep showing up, the breakthrough will come. Another challenge in long-term consistency is boredom. Novelty is exciting. Repetition can feel dull. But this is where mastery lives. In the willingness to do the same thing over and over, finding depth in the repetition. To combat boredom, look for ways to add variety within the structure. If you're writing every day, try different genres or formats. If you're working out every day, vary your exercises. The core habit stays the same, but the details shift enough to keep it interesting. You can also raise the stakes. Set new challenges. Enter competitions. Take on bigger projects. This creates fresh motivation without abandoning the foundational habit. Finally, let's talk about the role of seasons. Your life will go through different phases. Busy seasons and quiet seasons. High-stress periods and periods of ease. Long-term consistency means adapting to these seasons without breaking the core habit. During busy seasons, you might need to scale back to your minimum viable version. That's okay. What's important is maintaining the pattern. The streak doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be unbroken in some form. During quiet seasons, you can expand and experiment. Try advanced versions of your habit. Explore related skills. Use the extra bandwidth to level up. Long-term consistency isn't about being rigid. It's about being adaptable while maintaining the core commitment. It's about understanding that the journey is long, and sustainable approaches win. In the next chapter, we're going to address a critical aspect of long-term success: recovery and balance. Because you can't sprint forever. True consistency includes knowing when to rest. Chapter 11. The role of rest and recovery. This might seem counterintuitive in a book about consistency, but here's the truth. Rest is part of the system, not a break from it. If you push hard every single day without recovery, you will burn out. And burnout is the death of consistency. High performers understand this. Athletes know that muscles grow during rest, not during the workout. The workout breaks down the muscle fibers. The rest rebuilds them stronger. The same principle applies to mental and emotional work. You need recovery to sustain high performance. There are different types of rest, and you need all of them. Physical rest is obvious. Your body needs sleep and downtime to repair and recharge. If you're consistently sleep-deprived, every other aspect of your life will suffer. Your decision-making will be impaired. Your emotional regulation will be compromised. Your physical energy will be depleted. Make sleep non-negotiable. Aim for 7 to 9 hours. Create a bedtime routine that signals to your body it's time to wind down. Protect your sleep like you protect any other important commitment. Mental rest is about giving your brain a break from intense focus. You can only do deep work for so many hours before your cognitive capacity drops.
Schedule breaks throughout your day. Step away from your work.
Let your mind wander.
This isn't laziness. It's recovery.
And it's during these breaks that your brain often makes connections and solves problems you were stuck on. Emotional rest is about not being constantly on, not always performing,
not always managing other people's emotions or meeting their expectations.
This might mean spending time alone. It might mean being with people where you can fully relax and be yourself.
It might mean saying no to social obligations that drain you.
Spiritual rest, regardless of whether you're religious, is about connecting to something bigger than yourself.
It's about meaning and purpose.
It's about quiet reflection, meditation, prayer, time in nature, journaling, whatever fills your soul. This type of rest is often overlooked, but it's crucial for long-term well-being. Now let's talk about how to build rest into your consistency system. First, schedule it.
Rest isn't something you do when you have time.
You make time for it. Block it on your calendar like you would any other important appointment. If you don't schedule it, it won't happen. Second, have active recovery days. These are days where you're still honoring your commitment, but at a reduced intensity. If your habit is intense workouts, an active recovery day might be a gentle walk or yoga. If your habit is deep work, an active recovery day might be light administrative tasks or reading. The key is that you're still showing up, maintaining the pattern, but giving yourself space to recover. This prevents burnout while keeping your consistency intact. Third, recognize the signs of burnout before they become critical. These include persistent fatigue, loss of enthusiasm for things you usually enjoy, increased irritability, difficulty concentrating, and a sense of dread about your commitments. If you notice these signs, it's time to increase your recovery, not push harder. Another important concept is periodization. This comes from athletic training, where athletes cycle through periods of high intensity and lower intensity to optimize performance and prevent injury.
You can apply this to any area of life.
Maybe you go hard on your habit for 3 weeks, then take a deload week where you reduce intensity. Or you have seasons of the year where you push harder, and seasons where you maintain at a sustainable level.
This approach allows for intensity without burnout.
Let's also address guilt around rest. Many high achievers struggle with this. They feel like they should always be doing more. Rest feels like weakness or laziness. But this is a trap. Rest isn't the opposite of productivity. It's a component of it. Reframe rest as an investment, not a cost. You're not losing time. You're investing in your long-term capacity. You're sharpening the saw so that when you do work, you work better and more efficiently. One powerful practice is the weekly reflection. Set aside time each week, maybe Sunday evening, to review how you're feeling. Are you energized or depleted? Are you making progress or just going through the motions? This check-in allows you to adjust before small issues become big problems. Another practice is the quarterly reset. Every 3 months, take a day or a weekend to step back and evaluate. Look at your systems. Look at your goals. Look at your energy levels. Make adjustments. This prevents you from staying on a path that's no longer serving you just because you committed to it. Rest also includes allowing yourself to be imperfect. You don't have to optimize every moment. You don't have to have perfect discipline every single day. Sometimes good enough is good enough. This doesn't mean lowering your standards. It means recognizing that life is long, and sustainability requires flexibility. Here's a powerful reframe. True consistency includes rest. It's not consistent to push until you break. That's unsustainable. True consistency is finding a rhythm that you can maintain for years, even decades. And that rhythm must include recovery. In the next chapter, we're going to talk about what to do when you fall off track completely. Because it will happen. And knowing how to get back on is a critical skill. Chapter 12. Getting back on track after a major break, let's be real. You're going to fall off at some point.
Not a one-day miss. A major break.
Life will throw something at you.
An illness. A crisis. A major disruption.
And your carefully built consistency will crumble.
This isn't a question of if.
It's a question of when. And more importantly, what you do about it. Most people, when they fall off after a long streak, spiral into guilt and shame. They tell themselves they've failed. They've lost all their progress. They might as well give up. This thinking is toxic. And it's completely wrong. Here's the truth. Falling off doesn't erase what you built. The neural pathways are still there. The identity is still there. The knowledge and skills are still there. You haven't gone back to zero. You've just hit pause. And you can hit play again anytime you choose. The first step in getting back on track is to release the guilt. Guilt is a useless emotion in this context.
It doesn't motivate you.
It paralyzes you.
Instead of wallowing in what you didn't do, focus on what you're going to do next.
The past is gone. You only have control over the present moment. Use it wisely. The second step is to restart small. Do not try to pick up where you left off at full intensity. That's a recipe for failure. Your body and mind need to ease back in. Go back to your micro habit, just like you did on day one. Prove to yourself that you can show up again. One day, then another, then another. The third step is to identify what caused the break and adjust your system. Did life get too chaotic? Maybe you need a more flexible routine. Did you burn out? Maybe you were pushing too hard. Did you lose sight of your why? Maybe you need to reconnect with your deeper motivation. Every break is feedback. It's showing you where your system has weaknesses. Use it. Learn from it. Build a stronger system that can withstand similar challenges in the future. The fourth step is to recommit publicly. Tell someone you're starting again. This reactivates the accountability that helped you in the beginning. It also makes the commitment real. You're not just thinking about getting back on track. You're declaring it. Now let's talk about the mental game of restarting. One of the biggest obstacles is comparing your current self to your past self. You remember how easy the habit felt when you were in your groove. Now it feels hard again. This comparison creates frustration. But it's not a fair comparison. You're starting from a different place. You might be physically or mentally depleted from whatever caused the break. You might be dealing with more stress. The circumstances aren't the same. So the difficulty level won't be the same. Except that it might be harder right now. That's okay. It will get easier again as you rebuild momentum. Another mental trap is all-or-nothing thinking. You think that because you've broken a long streak, it doesn't matter if you break it more. But every day you stay off track is making it harder to get back on. The longer the break, the weaker the neural pathways, the fuzzier the identity. Don't let 1 month turn into 3. Don't let 3 turn into 6. Restart as soon as possible. One powerful technique for restarting is to create a mini challenge. Commit to just 7 days. That's it. Tell yourself, I'm going to do this for 1 week. That feels manageable. It doesn't feel like a lifelong commitment. And once you've done 7 days, you can commit to another 7. This approach removes the overwhelm. You're not thinking about maintaining consistency forever. You're just thinking about this week. And that's doable. Before you know it, those weeks add up, and you're back in your groove. Let's also talk about reframing the break as a lesson in resilience. The fact that you fell off and got back on is evidence that you're someone who doesn't quit. You're building mental toughness. You're proving that setbacks don't define you. This is valuable. This is growth. Don't underestimate the strength you're building by getting back up. Another important point. Getting back on track after a break often leads to a stronger system than you had before. Because now you know what can go wrong. You've tested your system under stress. You know where the weak points are, and you can reinforce them. Many people find that after a major break and restart, their consistency becomes even more resilient. Here's a radical idea: planned breaks. Some people build intentional breaks into their system. They commit to a habit for 90 days, then take a week off. They do this on purpose, to prevent burnout and to practice restarting. This takes the fear out of breaks. You know you can stop and start again. It's built into the plan. Now, this doesn't mean you should break your streak on purpose just to practice. But if you know that breaks are part of the long game, you'll handle them better when they happen naturally. One final thought on this: your worth as a person is not determined by your consistency. You are not a failure because you fell off track. You're human. And humans aren't perfect. Separate your identity from your actions. You are someone who is learning, growing, and becoming better over time. The path isn't straight, and that's okay. In the next chapter, we're going to talk about expanding your consistency to multiple areas of your life. Because once you've mastered one habit, the skills transfer. You can become someone who is consistent in everything that matters to you. Chapter 13. Expanding your consistency mastery. Once you've built unshakable consistency in one area, something interesting happens. You realize that the skills you developed are transferable. The system works. The principles apply universally, and you start to see opportunities to bring that same level of consistency to other areas of your life. But here's the key: don't try to do everything at once. The mistake most people make is getting excited about their progress in one area and then trying to overhaul their entire life simultaneously. They add 5 new habits at once, and within a week, they're overwhelmed and nothing sticks. The right approach is sequential mastery. Master one habit first. Make it automatic. Then add the next. This approach might feel slower, but it's actually much faster because habits actually stick. You're building a foundation instead of constantly starting over. Let's say your first consistency win was with exercise. You've been working out every day for 3 months. It's locked in. Now you want to add a reading habit. Don't abandon the workout. Keep that going. But now you add the new habit using everything you learned from the first. You know to start small. So you don't commit to reading an hour a day. You commit to reading for 10 minutes. You know the power of cues. So you attach the reading habit to an existing routine, like reading right after dinner. You know the importance of tracking. So you mark off each day you read on your calendar. Because you've been through the process once, you know what to expect. You know motivation will fade, and that's normal. You know there will be resistance and you can push through it. You know consistency is built one day at a time. All of this knowledge makes the second habit easier to build than the first. Once the second habit is automatic, you add a third, and so on. Over time, you build a lifestyle of consistency. You become someone who doesn't just have one disciplined area. You're disciplined across the board. But there's a hierarchy to consider. Not all habits are created equal. Some habits have a disproportionate positive impact on the rest of your life. These are keystone habits. When you lock these in first, everything else gets easier. Exercise is a classic keystone habit. When you're exercising regularly, you sleep better, eat better, have more energy, and feel better mentally. One habit creates a cascade of positive effects. Similarly, a morning routine, healthy eating, or regular sleep schedule can be keystones that elevate everything else. Start with a keystone. Master it. Then expand from there. This strategic approach maximizes your returns on effort. Now let's talk about habit stacking at scale. Once you have multiple habits, you can create sequences where one habit naturally flows into the next. This reduces decision fatigue and creates a powerful momentum throughout your day. For example, wake up, make bed, meditate for 5 minutes, journal for 5 minutes, exercise for 30 minutes, shower, eat a healthy breakfast, review daily goals, start deep work. Each action triggers the next. It becomes a chain reaction.
And chains are harder to break than individual links.
Another principle for expanding consistency is the 80-20 rule. 20% of your habits will create 80% of your results. Identify those high-impact habits and prioritize them. Make sure those are bulletproof. The other habits are nice to have, but these are non-negotiables. As you expand your consistency, you'll also need to expand your systems. You might need a more sophisticated tracking method. You might need to block more time on your calendar. You might need to refine your environment further to support multiple habits. That's okay. Your system should evolve as you grow.
One challenge you'll face is time constraints. There are only 24 hours in a day. At some point, you can't add more without removing something else.
This is where strategic elimination comes in. Look at how you're spending your time.
What's not serving you? What could you cut or delegate?
Most people waste hours a day on things that don't matter.
Social media, pointless meetings, activities they don't even enjoy but do out of obligation.
Cut ruthlessly. Every minute you reclaim can be invested in habits that actually move your life forward. Another strategy is efficiency stacking. Can you combine habits? Can you listen to audiobooks while you exercise?
Can you practice language learning during your commute?
Look for opportunities to get multiple benefits from the same time investment.
But be careful with this. Some habits deserve dedicated focus. Meditation, for example, loses its power if you're multitasking. The goal isn't to cram as much as possible into every minute.
It's to make sure that how you're spending your time aligns with your priorities. As your consistency expands, so does your identity. You're no longer just someone who exercises. You're someone who is disciplined. Period. This holistic identity is powerful because it's not tied to any single behavior. It's a core part of who you are. And when that identity is strong, consistency in all areas becomes your natural state.
One final note: as you master consistency, remember to enjoy the process.
This isn't about becoming a productivity robot.
It's about building a life that aligns with your values and allows you to show up as your best self.
Consistency isn't the goal.
It's the vehicle.
The goal is the life you build through that consistency. In the next chapter, we're going to talk about leaving a legacy through consistency. Because the ultimate measure of consistency isn't just what you achieve. It's what you inspire in others. Chapter 14. The legacy of consistency. Your consistency isn't just about you. Whether you realize it or not, people are watching. Your kids, if you have them. Your friends. Your co-workers. The people in your life see how you show up. And your example is teaching them what's possible. This is the legacy of consistency. It's not just the goals you achieve or the person you become. It's the ripple effect you create in the lives of others. When you demonstrate that discipline is possible, that change is possible, that commitment means something, you give others permission to believe it's possible for them too. Think about the people who have inspired you, the ones who made you believe you could do hard things.
Chances are, it wasn't their talent that inspired you.
It was their consistency,
their refusal to quit, their willingness to show up day after day even when it was hard.
That's what moved you. And that's what you can be for someone else.
But legacy isn't just about inspiration.
It's also about the systems you leave behind. When you build strong habits, routines, and frameworks, you can pass those down. You can teach others not just what to do, but how to do it. You can give them the blueprint that worked for you. This is especially powerful with kids. Kids don't learn from what you say. They learn from what you do.
If you tell them discipline is important but they never see you practicing it, the lesson won't land. But if they watch you consistently honoring your commitments, that becomes their norm.
They internalize it, and they carry it into their own lives.
Even if you don't have kids, you're still leaving a legacy.
The people in your sphere of influence are learning from your example. Your consistency gives them a model.
And for some of them,
It might be the only model of discipline they've ever seen. Now let's talk about mentorship. As you master consistency, you gain the ability to guide others on the same path. You've been through the struggles. You know the pitfalls. You can help someone else avoid the mistakes you made and accelerate their progress. Mentorship doesn't have to be formal. It can be as simple as sharing your story, talking honestly about your journey, offering encouragement when someone is struggling, holding someone accountable. These small acts of mentorship compound over time and can change someone's trajectory. There's also a selfish benefit to mentorship. When you teach something, you deepen your own understanding. When you hold someone else accountable, it reinforces your own commitment. Mentorship strengthens your consistency while helping someone else build theirs. It's a win-win. Another aspect of legacy is documentation. Write about your journey. Share your insights. Create content that others can learn from. This doesn't mean you need to start a blog or become an influencer. But keeping a record of what worked for you, what didn't, and what you learned creates a resource that can help others. Your documentation can also serve as a reminder to your future self. There will be times when you need to restart. Having a record of how you built consistency in the past makes it easier to rebuild it in the future. Legacy is also about the standards you set. In any group, there's usually one person whose standards are higher than everyone else's. And over time, the group either rises to match those standards or that person finds a new group. Be the person who sets the standard. Not in an arrogant way. In a way that inspires others to raise their own game. When you consistently show up with excellence, you create a culture of excellence around you. People start to expect more from themselves because they see what's possible. This is leadership. Not through authority, but through example. Let's also talk about generational impact. The habits you build don't just affect you. They can affect your family for generations. If you break a cycle of inconsistency or undiscipline that existed in your family, you change the trajectory for everyone who comes after you. That's profound. Conversely, the consistency you build can become a tradition, a standard that gets passed down. Your kids see you showing up every day. They internalize that. They do the same with their kids. And suddenly, your personal discipline has become a family legacy. But legacy isn't only about the future. It's also about the present. The community you're part of right now benefits from your consistency. When you show up, you make it easier for others to show up. When you hold the line, you give others the courage to hold theirs. Your presence matters. One of the most powerful questions you can ask yourself is, what do I want to be remembered for? Not just after you're gone, but even just next year. How do you want people to describe you? What impact do you want to have? Your answer to these questions should inform how you show up every day. If you want to be remembered as someone who was reliable, disciplined, and committed, then you need to live that way consistently. Legacy isn't built in a single moment. It's built in 1,000 small moments of choosing to do the right thing even when no one is watching. Here's the beautiful truth about legacy through consistency. It's available to everyone. You don't need to be famous or wealthy or extraordinarily talented. You just need to show up. And if you do that long enough with enough intention, you will leave a mark. In the final chapter, we're going to bring everything together. We're going to talk about the identity you've built, the system you've created, and the person you've become. Because by this point, you're not the same person who started this journey 30 days ago. You've transformed. And that transformation is just the beginning. Chapter 15. The person you become 30 days ago, you picked up this book because you wanted to build consistency. Maybe you were frustrated with starting and stopping. Maybe you were tired of watching opportunities slip away because you couldn't follow through. Maybe you just knew deep down that you were capable of more. And now, here you are. You've done the work. You've shown up day after day. You've pushed through resistance, navigated obstacles, and built a system that supports you. But more than that, you've changed who you are. Because that's what true consistency does. It doesn't just change what you do, it changes who you are. Every day you honored your commitment, you cast a vote for a new identity. And after 30 days of voting, that identity is now real. You're no longer someone who hopes to be disciplined. You are disciplined. You're not someone who wants to be consistent. You are consistent. This isn't a mindset shift. This is a fundamental transformation. And once you see yourself this way, everything changes. Let's take a moment to appreciate how far you've come. Think about the person you were on day one, the doubts you had, the skepticism, the fear that maybe this time wouldn't be any different. And look at you now. You proved yourself wrong in the best possible way. But here's the thing. This isn't the end. This is the beginning. Because now that you know you can build consistency in one area, you can build it anywhere. The skills are universal. The system works. And you have the evidence that you can do hard things. The question is, what's next? What other areas of your life are waiting for this level of commitment? Where else could you apply this system? The possibilities are endless. And now you have the tools and the confidence to pursue them. But remember, sustainable consistency isn't about perfection. It's about resilience. You will have setbacks. You will face new challenges. There will be days when you don't feel like showing up. And that's okay. Because you now know that feelings don't dictate actions. Your commitment does. You've also learned that consistency isn't a solo journey. The accountability, community, and support you've built are now part of your foundation. Continue nurturing those relationships. Continue seeking out people who challenge and inspire you. And don't forget to be that person for someone else. One of the most profound realizations you've likely had over these 30 days is that consistency isn't about the destination. It's about the person you become on the journey, the discipline you develop, the character you build, the self-trust you earn. These things are more valuable than any external goal. You've also learned that consistency is a practice, not a product. You don't achieve it and check it off your list. You maintain it. You refine it. You live it. And that's what makes it powerful. It's not a one-time event. It's a way of life. As you move forward, remember the core principles that got you here. Clarity in what you're committing to. Deep commitment to follow through regardless of how you feel. Systems that make consistency easier. An identity that aligns with your actions. These pillars will support you in everything you do. Also remember that rest is part of the system. You don't have to be in hustle mode every day. Consistency includes recovery. It includes flexibility. It includes giving yourself grace. The goal is sustainability, not burnout. And remember that your consistency has a ripple effect. The example you set matters. The legacy you're building matters. You're not just changing your own life. You're showing others what's possible. And that impact is immeasurable. So, what kind of person do you want to continue becoming? What legacy do you want to leave? What impact do you want to have? These questions are yours to answer. And the beautiful thing is, you now have the tools to bring those answers to life. You are no longer the person who struggles with consistency. You are someone who shows up. Someone who follows through. Someone who honors their commitments. And that makes you unstoppable. The journey doesn't end here. It expands. Every day is a new opportunity to live in alignment with the person you've become, to strengthen your identity, to refine your systems, to inspire others, to build something meaningful. And here's the final truth. You don't need another 30 days to be consistent. You don't need another challenge or framework. You already have everything you need. You've built the foundation. Now you just keep building. Consistency isn't something you chase. It's something you embody. And you right now embody it. So go forward with confidence. Keep showing up. Keep following through. Keep becoming the person you're meant to be. Because unshakable consistency isn't a destination you arrive at. It's a way of life you choose, every single day. And you've already chosen it. Welcome to the rest of your life. You've got this. Conclusion. Your consistency legacy starts today. You've reached the end of this book, but the beginning of something much bigger. Over the past 30 days, you haven't just built a habit. You've rewired your brain, transformed your identity, and proven to yourself that you are capable of extraordinary discipline. Let's recap the journey. You learned why you've struggled with consistency in the past, and it wasn't your fault. You were fighting biology and psychology without a system. Now you have a system. You discovered the 4 pillars of consistency: clarity, commitment, systems over goals, and identity. These aren't just concepts. They're the foundation of everything you've built. You followed the 30-day framework, moving through the foundation phase, the momentum phase, and the integration phase. Each phase was designed to work with your brain's natural wiring, making consistency easier at every stage. You designed an environment that supports your goals instead of sabotaging them. You removed friction from good behaviors and added friction to bad ones. You surrounded yourself with accountability and community. You mastered the mental game. You learned to observe your thoughts without being controlled by them. You rewired your self-talk. You reframed challenges as opportunities. And you separated action from emotion, realizing that motivation follows action, not the other way around. You discovered the power of micro-habits and tiny wins. You learned that massive transformation comes from small, consistent actions compounded over time. You embraced the compound effect and trusted the process even when results weren't immediately visible. You navigated obstacles without breaking your streak. You implemented the never miss twice rule. You created scaled versions of your habit for tough days. And you learned that flexibility within structure is the key to long-term sustainability. You built accountability and tapped into the power of community. You realized that you don't have to do this alone, and that surrounding yourself with people who embody the traits you want to develop makes everything easier. You understood the neuroscience of habit formation. You learned how the habit loop works, how to design cues and rewards, and how to leverage dopamine to make your habit sticky. You committed to long-term consistency, understanding that the real transformation happens after the initial 30 days. You embraced the compound effect, optimized your systems, and built habits that integrate seamlessly into your lifestyle. You recognized the role of rest and recovery. You learned that true consistency includes strategic recovery, and that pushing without rest leads to burnout, which destroys consistency. You learned how to get back on track after a major break. You released the guilt, restarted small, and used the break as feedback to build a stronger system. You expanded your consistency to multiple areas of your life, mastering habits sequentially and building a lifestyle of discipline. And finally, you embraced the legacy of consistency. You realized that your example matters, that you're teaching others what's possible, and that the person you become through this process is your greatest achievement. So, where do you go from here? You keep going. You maintain what you've built. You continue refining. You stay committed to the identity you've created. And you remember that consistency isn't a destination. It's a practice. There will be hard days ahead. Days when you don't feel like showing up. Days when motivation is nowhere to be found. And on those days, remember this: you don't need motivation. You have something better. You have a system. You have an identity. You have proof that you can do hard things. You are no longer someone who struggles with consistency. You are someone who shows up, no matter what. And that makes all the difference. Your consistency legacy starts today. Not 30 days from now. Not next week. Day. Every action you take is either strengthening or weakening that legacy. Choose to strengthen it. Choose to show up. Choose to honor the person you've become. The world needs more people like you. People who keep their word. People who follow through. People who prove that discipline is possible. Be that example. Live that legacy.
And remember, unshakable consistency isn't about being perfect.
It's about being relentless.
It's about refusing to quit, even when quitting would be easy.
It's about stacking one day on top of another until you've built something extraordinary. You've done it once. Now do it again. And again. And again. Until consistency isn't something you think about. It's just who you are. Welcome to the rest of your life. You are consistent. You are disciplined. You are unstoppable. Now go prove it.